Hello readers, welcome back to Reads with Room B, with me, Room B. Today we are on chapter 17, the final chapter of Peter Pan. Let's begin. When Wendy grew up. I hope you want to know what became of the other boys. They were waiting below to give Wendy time to explain about them. When they had counted 500, they went up. They went up by the stair because they thought this would make a better impression. They stood in a row in front of Miss Darling with their hats off, wishing they were not wearing their pirate clothes. They said nothing, but their eyes asked her to have them. They ought to have looked at Mr. Darling also, but they forgot about him. Of course, Miss Darling said at once she would have them, but Mr. Darling was curiously depressed. They saw that he considered 6 a rather large number. I must say, he said to Wendy, that you don't do things by halves. A grudging remark, which the twins thought was pointed at them. The first twin was a proud one, and he asked, flushing, "Do you think we should be too much of a handful, sir? Because if so, we can go away." "Father!" cried Wendy, shocked. But still the cloud was on him. He was behaving unworthily, but he could not help it. "We could lie double up," said Nims. I always cut their hair myself," said Wendy. "George!" Miss Darling exclaimed, pained to see her dear one showing himself in such an unfavourable light. And then he burst into tears, and the truth came out. He was as glad to have them as she was. He said, but he thought they should have asked his consent as well as hers, instead of treating him as a cipher in his own house. "I don't think he is a cipher," cried Toodles instantly. "Do you think he is a cipher, Curly?" I don't think... Do you think he is a cipher, Slightly?" "Rather not. Twin, what do you think?" It turned out that not one of them thought of him as a cipher, and he was absurdly gratified, and he said he would find space for them all in the drawing room if they fitted in. "We will fit in, sir," they assured him. Then follow the leader, he cried gaily. "Mind you, I am not sure that we have a drawing room, but we pretend we have, and it's all the same. Hoopla!" He went off dancing through the house, and they all cried hoopla and danced after him, searching for the drawing room. I forgot whether they found it, but at any rate they found corners, and they all fitted in. As for Peter, he saw Wendy once again before he flew away. He did not exactly come to the window, but he brushed against it in passing so that she could open it if she liked, and call to him, and that is what she did. "Hello, Wendy." "Goodbye," he said. "Oh dear, are you going away?" "Yes." "Don't you feel, Peter?" she said falteringly. "You would like to say something to my parents about a very sweet subject?" "No." "About me, Peter?" "No." Miss Darling came to the window, for at present she was keeping a sharp eye on Wendy. She told Peter that she had adopted all the other boys, and would like to adopt him also. "Would you send me to school?" he inquired craftily. "Yes, and then to an office, I suppose. Soon I would be a man." "Very soon. I don't want to go to school and learn solemn things," he told her passionately. "I don't want to be a man. Oh, Wendy's mother, if I was to wake up and feel there was a beard." "Peter," said Wendy, the comforter, "I should love you in a beard." And Miss Darling stretched her arms out to him, but he was repulsed by her. "Keep back, lady. No one is going to catch me and make me a man." "But where are you going to live?" "With Tink, in the house we built for Wendy. The fairies are going to put it high up among the treetops where they sleep at nights." "Oh, how lovely!" cried Wendy, so longingly that Miss Darling tightened her grips. "I thought all the fairies were dead," said Miss Darling. "There are always a lot of young ones," explained Wendy, who was now quite an authority, "because you see, when a new baby laughs for the first time, a new fairy is born. And as there are always new babies, there are always new fairies. They live in nests at the top of trees. and the mauve ones are boys, and the white ones are girls, and the blue ones are just little sillies who are not sure what they are. I shall have such fun, said Peter, with an eye on Wendy. It will be rather lonely in the evenings, sitting by the fire. I shall have Tink. Tink can't go a 20th part of the way around, she reminded him a little tartly. Sneaky telltale, Tink called out from somewhere around the corner. It doesn't matter, said Peter. Oh, Peter, you know it matters. Well, come with me to the little house. May I, Mummy? Certainly not. I have got you home again, and I mean to keep you. But he does so need a mother. So do you, my love. Oh, all right, said Peter, as if he had asked her for mere politeness. But Miss Darling saw a twitch in his mouth, and she made him this handsome offer to let Wendy go to him for a week every year to do his spring cleaning. Wendy would have preferred a more permanent arrangement, and it seemed to her that spring would be long in coming. But you see, this promise sent Peter away quite gay again, and he had no sense of time, and was so full of adventures, and all that I have told you about him is only half a penny worth of them. So I suppose it was because Wendy knew that her last words to him were rather plaintive ones. You won't forget me, will you, Peter? You won't forget me before the spring cleaning comes. Of course, Peter promised, and then he flew away. He took Miss Darling's kiss with him, the kiss that had been for no one else. Peter took it quite easily, funny. But she seemed satisfied. Of course, all the boys went to school, and most of them got into class 3, but Slightly was first put into class 4, and then into class 5, and then into class 1. It's the top class. Before they had attended school a week, they saw what goats they had been to not remain on the island, but it was too late now, and they settled down to being ordinary as you, me, or Jenkins Minor. It is sad to say that the power to fly gradually left them. At first, Nana tied their feet to their bedposts so that they should not fly away at night. And one of their diversions by day was to pretend to fall off buses. But by and by they ceased tugging at their bonds in their bed, and found that they hurt themselves when they let go of the bus. In time they could not even fly after their hats. Want of practice, they called it. But what it really meant was that they no longer believed. Michael no longer believed the other boys, though they jeered at him, and so he was with Wendy when Peter came for her at the end of the first year. She flew away with Peter in a frock she had woven from leaves and berries in Neverland, and her one fear was that he might notice how short it had become, but he never noticed. He never noticed. He had so much to say about himself. She had looked forward to thrilling talks with him about old times, but new adventures had crowded the old ones from his mind. Who is Captain Hook? He asked with interest when she spoke of his arch enemy. Why, don't you remember, Peter? She asked, amazed. You killed him and saved all our lives. I forget them after I kill them, he replied carelessly. When she expressed a hopeful doubt that Tinker Bell would be glad to see her, he said, Who's Tinker Bell? Oh, Peter, she said, shocked. But even when she explained, he could not remember. There are such a lot of them, he said. I expect she is no more. I expect he was right, for fairies don't live long, but they are so little that so short a time seems a good while to them. Wendy was pained to find that the past year was but a yesterday to Peter. It had seemed such a long year of waiting for her. But he was exactly as fascinating as ever, and they had a lovely spring cleaning in the little house on the treetops. Next year he did not come for her. She waited in a new frock, simply because the old one would not meet. But he never came. Perhaps he is ill. You know he is never ill. Michael came closer, to her and whispered with a shiver, "Perhaps there is no such person, Wendy." And Wendy would have cried if Michael had not been crying. Peter came next spring cleaning, and the strange thing was that he never knew he missed a year. That was the last time Wendy girl ever saw him. For a little longer she tried for his sake not to have growing pains, but she felt she was untrue to him when she got a prize for general knowledge. But years came and went without bringing the careless boy, and when they meet again, Wendy was a married woman, and Peter was no more to her than a little dust in a box in which she had kept her toys. Wendy was grown up. You need not be sorry for her. She was one of the kind that likes to grow up, and in the end she grew up of her own free will, a day quicker than all the other girls. All the other boys were grown up and done for by this time, so it is scarcely worthwhile saying anything more about them. You may see the twins, Nibs and Curly, any day going to an office and carrying a little bag each and an umbrella too. Michael is an engine driver, slightly married a lady of title, so he became a lord. You see that judge in a wig coming out the iron door? That used to be Toodles, the bearded man who doesn't know any story to tell his children once. John. Wendy was married in white and pink, in a white with pink sash. It is strange to think that Peter did not alight upon the church and forbid the banns. Years rolled on again, and Wendy had a daughter. This ought not to be written in ink, but a gold splash. She was called Jane, and always had an odd, inquiring look, as if from the moment she arrived on the mainland she wanted to ask questions. When she was old enough to ask them, they were mostly about Peter Pan. She loved to hear of Peter, and Wendy told her all she could remember in the very nursery from which the famous flight had taken place. It was now Jane's nursery, for her father had bought it at 3 cents per from Wendy's father, who was no longer fond of stairs. Miss Darling was now dead and forgotten. There were only 2 beds in the nursery now, Jane and her nurse's. There was no kennel, for Nana also had passed away. She had died of old age, and had been rather difficult to get on with in the end, being firmly convinced that no one knew how to look after children except herself. Once a week Jane's nurse had her evening off, and then it was Wendy's part to put Jane to bed. That was the time for stories. It was Jane's invention to raise the sheet over her mother's head and her own, and thus make a tent, and in the awful darkness whisper, "What do we see now?" "Oh, I don't think we shall see anything tonight," says Wendy, with a feeling that if Nana were there she would object to further conversation. "Yes, you do," says Jane. "You see, when you were a little girl." That was a time long ago, sweetheart," says Wendy. "Ah me, how time flies." "Does it fly?" asked the artful child. "The way you flew when you were a little girl, the way I flew? Do you know, Jane, sometimes I wonder if I ever really flew at all." "Yes, you did. Dear old days when I could fly. Why can't you fly now, Mother?" "Because I am grown up, dearest. When people grow up, they forget the way." "Why do you forget the way?" "Because they are no longer gay and innocent and heartless. It is only the gay, the innocent, and the heartless who can fly." "What is gay and innocent and heartless? I do wish I were gay and innocent and heartless." Or perhaps, Wendy admits, she does see something. "I do believe," she says, "that this is the nursery." "I do believe it is," says Jane. "Go on." They are now embarked on the great adventure of the night when Peter flew in looking for his shadow. "The foolish fellow," said Wendy. "He's tried to stick it on with soap, and when he could not, he cried, and that woke me, and I sewed for him." You have missed a bit," interrupts Jane, who knows by now the story far better than her mother. "When you saw him sitting on the floor crying, what did you say?" "I sat up in bed and said, 'Boy, why are you crying?' Yes, that's it, said Jane with a big breath. And then he flew us all the way to Neverland, and the fairies, and the pirates, and the redskins, and the mermaid's lagoon, and the homes underground, and the little house. Yes, which did you like best of all? I think I like the home underground best of all. Yes, so do I. That was the last thing. What was the last thing Peter ever said to you? The last thing he ever said to me was, just always be waiting for me, and then some night you will hear me crowing. Yes. But alas, he has forgotten all about me, Wendy said with a smile. She was as grown up as that. What did his crow sound like? Asked Jane one evening. It was like this, Wendy said, trying to imitate Peter's crow. No, it wasn't, said Jane gravely. It was like this, and she did it much better than her mother. Wendy was a little startled. My darling, how can you know? I hear it often when I am sleeping, said Jane. Ah, yes, many girls hear it when they are sleeping, but I was the only one to hear it when I was awake. Lucky you, said Jane. And one night, tragedy came. It was spring of the year the story had been told for the night, and Jane was now asleep in her bed, and Wendy was sitting on the floor very close to the fire so as to see to darn, for there was no other light in the nursery, and while she sat darning, she heard a crow. The window blew open as of old, and Peter dropped to the floor. He was exactly the same as ever. Wendy saw at once that he still had all of his first teeth. He was a little boy, and she had grown up. She huddled by the fire, not daring to move, helpless and guilty, a big woman. Hello, Wendy, he said, not noticing any difference, for he was thinking chiefly of himself, and in the dim light her white dress might have been a nightgown in which he had first seen her. Hello, Peter, she replied faintly, squeezing herself as small as possible. Something inside her was crying, Woman, woman, let go of me. Hello, where is John? He asked, suddenly missing the third bed. John is not here now, she gasped. Is Michael asleep? He asked with a careless glance at Jane. Yes, she answered, and now she felt she was untrue to Jane as well as to Peter. Well, that is not Michael, she said quickly, lest a judgment should fall upon her. Hello, who is this new one? Yes. A boy or a girl? A girl. Now surely you would understand, but not a bit of it. Peter, she said falteringly, are you expecting me to fly away with you? Of course. That is why I have come, he added a little sternly. Have you forgotten that it is spring cleaning time? She knew it was useless to say he had let many spring cleaning times pass. I can't come, she said apologetically. I have forgotten how to fly. I'll soon teach you again. Oh, Peter, don't waste the fairy dust on me. She had risen, and now at last a fear assailed him. What is it? He cried, shrieking. I will turn up the light, she said, and then you can see for yourself. For almost the only time in his life that I know of, Peter was afraid. Don't turn up the light, he cried. She let her hands play with the hair of the tragic boy. She was no longer the little girl with a broken heart about him. She was a grown woman, smiling at it all, but her eyes were wide and wet. She turned up the light, and Peter saw. He gave a great cry of pain. When the tall, beautiful creature stooped to lift him in her arms, he drew sharply back. What is it? He cried again. She had to tell him. Peter, I am old. I am ever so much more than 20. I grew up a long time ago. You promised not to. I couldn't help it, Peter. I am a married woman now. No, you're not. Yes, and the little girl is in the bed is my baby. No, she is not. But he supposed she was, and he took a step toward the sleeping child with his dagger upraised. Of course, he did not strike. He sat down on the floor instead and sobbed, and Wendy did not know how to comfort him, though she could have done it done it easily once. She was only a woman now and ran out of the room to think. Peter continued to cry, and soon his sobs woke Jane, and she sat up in her bed at once in interest. "Boy," she said, as her mother had once long ago said, "why are you crying?" Peter rose and bowed to her, and she bowed to him from the bed. "Hello," he said. "Hello," said Jane. "My name is Peter Pan," he told her. "Yes, I know. I came back for my mother," he explained, "to take her to Neverland." "Yes, I know," said Jane. "I have been waiting for you." And when Wendy returned diffidently, she found Peter sitting on the four-post bed, crowing gloriously, while Jane in her nightie was flying round the room in solemn ecstasy. "She is my mother," Peter explained, and Jane descended and stood by his side, and they looked her in the face like that he liked to see on ladies when they gazed at him. "He does need a mother. Yes, I know. No one knows it so well as I," admitted Wendy, rather forlornly. "Goodbye," said Peter to Wendy, and he rose into the air, and shamelessly Jane rose with him, already her easiest way of moving about. Wendy rushed to the window. "No, no," she cried. "It is time for spring cleaning," said Jane, "and he wants me always to do his spring cleaning. Only if I get to go with you." Wendy sighed. "You can't fly," said Jane. And of course, in the end, Wendy would let them fly away together. Our last glimpse of her shows her at the window, watching them recede into the sky until they were as small as stars. As you look at Wendy, you may see her hair becoming white, her figure little again, for this happened so long ago. Jane is now a common grown-up with a daughter called Margaret, and every spring cleaning time, except when he forgets, Peter comes for Margaret to take her to Neverland where she tells him stories about himself, to which he listens eagerly. And when Margaret grows up, she will have a daughter who will be Peter's mother in turn, and thus it will go on, so long as children are innocent, gay, and heartless. The end. Thank you all for joining us in our read of Peter Pan. We have seriously enjoyed reading to you. Like, subscribe, and follow. Stay safe, readers. Be awesome. Keep reading.